Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? Where today I will be looking at the third episode of the second season of Star Trek Picard, titled Assimilation, and taking a look at all the references and Easter eggs that you may have missed. The title of the episode is a reference to the many ways the crew must assimilate to new things in order to get to where they want to go. The most obvious connection is how Dr. Girardi allows herself to be connected to the Boar Queen and must keep the Queen from assimilating her, while the good doctor is able to assimilate the knowledge that the crew needs. Seven, Raffi, and Rios must assimilate to the new culture of the 21st century, while each is going through their own personal journey because of the events of the season. Seven is finally able to live a life beyond that of a former Borg drone, and is not seen with fear or apprehension, thanks to her Borg implants no longer being present on her face. Raffi has to bottle up her feelings and go on with the mission, even though she is still grieving over the loss of Elnor, and has resigned to the thought that completing this mission will bring Elnor back. It took Rios about 5 minutes to contaminate the timeline, even after he was warned not to, and now he must find a way out of his predicament in order to prevent changing the timeline even further. Now Picard has to assimilate to the concept of leading a crew that at this point does not completely believe in his leadership like the crews he's used to being the leader of. The episode begins right where the last one ended, with the crew of the La Serena in a standoff with the Magistrate of the Confederation and his security. The actor playing the Magistrate is John Briones, who is the father of actress Issa Briones, who plays Soji. Since most of the season of Picard looks like it will be spent in the 21st century, and Soji did not join the crew on their time travel adventure, we may not see Soji again this season. If you are wondering why this boarding party chose to shoot Elnor and left everyone else alive, it could be for a couple of reasons. One is that the human race are extremely xenophobic in this timeline, and Elnor could have been shot just because he was a Romulan. But I think when the Magistrate states that they should have seen what Elnor did to his prior security team, it tells us that they were afraid of what Elnor could do to them and put him down for their own safety. Raffi does get some revenge on the Magistrate though, as she's able to perform a perfect Kirk barrel roll into a killing shot. The fact that Seven and Raffi are unable to find medical supplies, like a medical tricorder for Elnor, is indicative of the type of vessel made for this time period. Since in this timeline, every ship is built as a destroyer, not as an exploration ship, things like medical supplies and science equipment would be sacrificed for more ordnance or defense. Even in the main timeline, on Deep Space Nine, Dr. Bashir discussed the distinction once he boarded the Defiant for the first time, which was a new ship built to fight against the Borg and in the Dominion War. The Defiant was a smaller vessel, but even for its size, it hardly had any medical bay or supplies like you would expect to find on a Starfleet vessel. The Boar Queen is able to take control of the ship after crawling around on the floor in one of the creepiest scenes from any Star Trek episode. This version of the Queen appears to be different than the ones previously played by Alice Krige and Susanna Thompson, and this Queen is played by actress Annie Wersching. As I stated in my prior video, she started her television career on Star Trek Enterprise in the episode Oasis, and she is actually one of 2 actors to return to Star Trek in a different role in this episode. Also, if you've been watching my videos all season, you may hear me bring up some references again, but it's because I don't know who has watched my other videos and who hasn't. Thankfully, a lot more people seem to be watching my videos about Picard, but I promise I won't keep repeating them every week. With the Queen's help, the crew are able to complete the slingshot around the sun method of time travel. This was completed by the crew of the USS Enterprise in 2 episodes of the original series, and also by the crew of the Bounty, a Klingon ship that Kirk and company commandeered in the movie The Voyage Home. During the sequence, Rios even counts out the warp drive level like Sulu did in the time travel scene from The Voyage Home.
Warp 6. Warp 7. Warp 8.
The ship makes it back to 2024, and Dr. Girardi is able to figure this out by looking for known structures like the colony on the moon and the level of pollutants in the atmosphere. This is almost exactly how Picard and the crew of the Enterprise E reacted when they traveled back in time in the movie First Contact. Suddenly, the ship loses power and starts falling towards the Earth. One of the sounds the ship makes sounds like the inertia starter on a 1928 US Army biplane, which is the same sound used for the Millennium Falcon when the ship is unable to jump to hyperspace.
Gravity, I can't stop her!
They're getting closer.
Oh yeah? Watch this.
In a very needs of the many type moment, Picard stops Rios from killing the Queen, which leads to Elnor succumbing to his injury. Star Trek has always adopted the Back to the Future style of time travel, which means that when people go back in time, they actually change their present and do not create another timeline like we have seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This would mean that if and when Picard and crew are able to stop the event that changes the future, everyone's future would be changed, including Elnor, which would bring him back to life. Speaking of Back to the Future, this episode of Picard was directed by none other than Leah Thompson, who as an actress in the 1980s and on has played many roles, but is probably best known for playing Lorraine Baines McFly in the Back to the Future trilogy. Something you may have missed in Elnor's last scene is that when Elnor asks for the medallion that the nuns gave him, he tells Raffi that it gives him comfort knowing that in this reality he still earned it. Elnor was raised by the Qowat Milat, a group of Romulan warrior nuns that were made up of all women until he joined their ranks. But this only occurred in the main timeline after the Romulan planet went supernova and the survivors were displaced. And if Elnor is a member of the Qowat Milat in this new timeline as well, it means that the same event almost definitely occurred. The inscription on the medallion reads, "Now is the only moment," which echoes one of Picard's most famous quotes from probably my favorite episode of The Next Generation, The Inner Light.
Make now always the most precious time. Now will never come again.
It is sad to see Elnor go, but it leads to a very emotional scene with Raffi and gives her a strong purpose this season. I think that Michelle Hurd is killing it as Raffi and is creating one of the more complex and realistic characters in the franchise, and I hope that more people notice. When Raffi asks Dr. Girardi if she is sure that fixing the future will bring Elnor back, the doctor says that it is impossible for her to know if they exist outside a temporal causality loop. A temporal causality loop would be a change to the timeline that has to occur in order for the future to take hold. This would mean that Elnor dying would have to always happen if the present is to be fixed. And the fact that he died after the crew traveled to the past may be a sign that this is the case. But with as popular as the character Elnor is, I'd be very surprised if the writers chose to end this season by having the crew complete their mission, but still losing Elnor. While Dr. Girardi is trying to explain to Rios how important it is that they do not affect the future by their presence in this time period, she mentions that they need to watch out for butterflies. This is a reference to the butterfly effect, which is a theory that the littlest change or ripple could have major ramifications for the future, and is also a really bad movie from the early 2000s starring Ashton Kutcher. The term the butterfly effect was coined by meteorologist Edward Norton Lorenz, who found that paths of tornadoes could be influenced by the flapping of a butterfly's wings from miles away. While Dr. Girardi and Picard work on waking up the Boar Queen, Picard mentions his time as Locutus. This was the name he was given as a representative for the Borg to assist in humanity's assimilation in the Next Generation episode, The Best of Both Worlds. I've seen online a few people state that in this new reality that Picard is not an android. That is not correct. It just didn't happen in the same manner as we saw in Season 1 of Picard. In the last episode of Picard, while Q is reading off the names of the skulls in Picard's study, he mentions that Picard got his android body in this timeline after killing Dukat. I was wondering if now that Picard is an android, if he would even be able to be assimilated by the Boar Queen, since Data stated in Star Trek First Contact that he could not be assimilated, and Picard's body is a form of the same technology that made up Data. But Picard seems to think that being assimilated would be as easy as it would be if he were still human. When Seven, Raffi, and Rios beam to Los Angeles, Seven and Raffi are able to find each other, but Rios is on his own after being found hurt on the street. This is very similar to the way that Sisko and Bashir were separated from Jadzia Dax when they all landed in California in the Deep Space Nine time travel episode, Past Tense. Raffi seems to land in an area that was once a sanctuary district, another reference back to the same episode of Deep Space Nine, as this was where Sisko and Bashir ended up. While there, you can see on a billboard an ad for something called the Europa mission. The ad also states that it has to do with extraplanetary exploration and uses the phrase, "Too boldly go." "Too boldly go" is an obvious reference to the intro speech said by both Captain Kirk and Captain Picard at the beginning of their respective shows. This mission to Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, may be one of humanity's first strides into what will one day become Starfleet. When Raffi and Seven get to the top of the tower, they are stopped by a security guard. This character may have a descendant that serves in Starfleet one day, as the actor playing the security guard is Matt Kaminsky, who also played Crewman Cunningham on 2 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise. Rios ends up at a free clinic with a head injury, which could be a callback to how Chekhov was injured during the movie The Voyage Home. Rios even winces in pain when he gets a shot, and while he is a tough guy, this is probably the first syringe that he has ever felt in his lifetime. The doctor Rios is with at first tells him that she is not a doctor, then says she is a doctor, and that joke never works. This is probably a clever callback to the infamous "I am a doctor" phraseology that Dr. McCoy would use as the chief medical officer of the USS Enterprise.
Why the hell would I want to do that? Can you or can you not? Damn it, man, I'm a doctor, not a torpedo technician.
While looking out at a wildfire, Seven remarks how she believes that they are already seeing the beginnings of the future they are trying to prevent. While this story is obviously fiction, wildfires and rampant homelessness are very real and prevalent for the population of Los Angeles, so it's pretty weird how much life is imitating art in this episode. At the clinic, the doctor tells her son that he has to do his homework or that he can't watch Rick and Morty. This line actually has a few connections to the Star Trek universe. One of the main creative minds behind Rick and Morty is Mike McMahon, who's also the creator and executive producer of the animated series Star Trek Lower Decks. Also, Rick and Morty was created by Dan Harmon, who has created many different series like Community and another lesser-known project named the Sarah Silverman Program, which ran for 3 years. Sarah Silverman also starred as Rain Robinson in the Star Trek Voyager episode Future's End that also saw the crew of the Voyager travel back to Los Angeles, but in the 1990s. When Rios and the Doctor are arrested, the ICE officer asks for a UHC card. This stands for Universal Healthcare Card, and they were also mentioned in the Deep Space Nine episode Past Tense. Well, that was everything I saw in this week's episode, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please hit that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?